with us. The next speaker I'd like to introduce, Dr. David Newman. He's a professor in the physics department in the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And so when I started the Alaska Center for Energy and Power, or was asked to organize it, I kind of did a survey of all the faculty members that were already doing energy research at the university, and David's name came up right away at the forefront of that. As one of the most esteemed faculty members we have working on energy problems, on complex physics, on networks, especially transmission grids, and I think we're going to hear a little bit about that tonight. But so, you know, when you're in a brand new startup research program that really doesn't have any money, you know, it's kind of difficult to, you know, get engaged and involved with people that have a long history on the topic. And so I've been hoping that we can work with David for many, many years. And so I thought, you know, what better way, you know, if he's a very busy person, but if I bring him here to the Blue Loon and get him to give a TED Talk, then maybe we can continue to work together, because your side of grids and our side of grids is exactly the opposite, and that's what's so interesting about it. So thank you very much for agreeing to come tonight, because I know you have a very busy schedule. So thank you, David.
Thank you, Gwen. Now I understand, you're bringing me into the Blue Loon to get me drunk. So what I would like to do is, you're going to have to wait for a second, and this is completely different than the previous talks that you've seen, in the following sense. I'm going to try to get a number of you to start thinking a little bit differently about how we view the systems that we live in. And those systems vary from small-scale systems. For me, small-scale systems are going to be things like microgrids, up to really large-scale systems, like the coupled system between the internet and the energy system and the environmental systems. So soon, perhaps, I'm a problem child, and the problem is that I provided, instead of a PowerPoint, a PDF, and so it's a little bit more difficult. So in a moment, we're going to get there. Beautiful. So I'm going to back up. You saw the beautiful pictures already. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get you to think about systems from a new lens, from a new kind of point of view. And that point of view is the point of view of kind of a holistic, ooh, I shouldn't stand near there, a holistic system level, complex system type view. And these complex systems are all around us. They vary from things as simple as the economic system of the world, to things as complicated as human relationships. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of a tour through some of these. And I'm going to tell you up front, because I'm going to run out of time at the end, I'm going to tell you up front that what I would really like for you to take home from this is that these complex systems are all around us. They're really cool, and looking at them from the complex systems point of view can teach us new things. And the reason it can teach us new things, or among the reasons that it can teach us new things, are because they have these things that we call universal characteristics. These are things that we often look for. Does this look like this in some way? And some of those universal characteristics of complex systems are things like what we're going to call a heavy tail. And heavy tail is not actually having a heavy tail. Instead, it's a higher likelihood of big bad things happening than you would think. Another characteristic of these complex systems is something called long time correlations. And that means that what happens today actually depended upon what happened yesterday, and last week, and last month, and last year. And so these characteristics are really important, because it tells us that we don't just have to know about what's going on now, but we have to know about what happened in the past. And this is important if you want to really understand what the risks that you have are right now. And then finally, the thing I'd like you to take home from this is the power grid, which is what a lot of the work that we actually do is in. Because it's a complex system, it actually exhibits some really weird things. And among those weird things are, sometimes you try to make it better, and it makes it worse. And this is not a good thing. You know, you say, oh, if I improve the pieces of my system, surely that's going to make it better. In fact, it can make it worse. All right, so why am I doing this? Partly it's because perception is really important. And I'm showing you this picture because I think it's a cool picture. But perception is really, really important. And perception depends upon the lens that you're looking at things through. And therefore, I'm trying to get you to look at things through a new lens. If you show this picture to kids, they'll think, oh, it's a toy airplane hanging in front of a globe or something like that. If you show it to kind of adults who are jaded, they'll say, oh, someone photoshopped a picture of an airplane in front of the sun. The truth of the matter is this is a real picture of an airplane flying in front of the sun, and you can look at it in so many different ways. I look at it and I say, wow, this is so cool, because I can see this turbulence behind the airplane. I can study that. I can try to understand that. I can see the sun, and I can see the turbulence on the sun, and the prominences coming out of the sun. This is just so much cool stuff in this picture. And I'm saying this because your lens that you're looking at things with really affects your perception of what's in the picture. And so I'm going to try to change a little bit for some of you what that view is. I've already used up half my time, and so I better go a lot faster. So what I want you to do is I want you to always think about things in new ways. Use your imagination. Don't get trapped in the trap that most of us get trapped into, and that is doing the same thing, looking at things in the same way. And that's why I'm pushing the complex systems viewpoint. All right, so now I get to the outline. I'm going to tell you what I mean by complex systems. I'm going to really, really quickly talk a little bit about some of those characteristics. Then I'm going to quickly go through 3 little cases of complex systems. One is the forest fire, one is human behavior, and then one is the power grid. All right, so, oh, I'm not done with my pontificating yet. What are we trying to do? What are we trying to do with science? What we're trying to do is we're trying to understand how the world around us works, right? And so for us to think that we understand how the world around us works, we have to be able to come up with models. And these models have to do at least one of 2 things. And those 2 things are, we have to be able to predict something new with the model, and or we have to clarify some physical process. And I think that, for me at least, one of the reasons that I have so much fun with complex systems is because complex systems, or the kind of paradigm of complex systems, is something that allows you to do both of these things. All right, so what do we mean by a complex system? A complex system, this is way too many words. A complex system is a system in which many linearly interacting parts exist. So what's, first of all, nonlinear? So imagine that my hand is controlled by some kind of a widget. And I've got a widget that can make my hand go up and down. All right? And then I add to it another widget that can make my hand go right and left. So I put those 2 widgets together now. And if they behave linearly, the end result is simply the sum of the 2 pieces. And you'll get something that either goes around in a circle or maybe in a line like this. But those are the only basic things that those 2 widgets can do if they're linearly interacting. If they interact non-linearly, who knows what can happen? I can put them together and my hand just goes flying off to the moon. All right? I'd like to keep it here, but it could. And so the non-linear interaction is really important. But it gets much better than that, because when we have many pieces non-linearly interacting, then altogether new things happen. You get new patterns and new states and new dynamics. That's how things evolve. And that's what we like to look at. The usefulness of this is, well, we can look for some universality, like these heavy tails. So that, again, means that the probability of big events is much larger than we think it should be. Long time correlations, what happens today depended upon what happened in the past, way in the past. And we can have some predictive capabilities in the sense that we can do these what-if type of analyses and say, what if we make the components better? Well, maybe it'll make our system much worse. The truth is that this is a lot of fun, and that's why we really do it. So, complicated versus complex. Cars are complicated. They have lots of pieces in them, but we really, really hope that when we turn the car on, it doesn't suddenly start flying. All right? We believe that it's the sum of its pieces, that it's linear. Traffic, on the other hand, is complex. Trying to control traffic is something that has stymied the best minds. This is really true. I mean, they've had huge projects to try to control traffic in big cities, and they fail. Trees, complicated. Forests, complex. Neurons, complicated. The brain, complex. Computers, complicated. The internet, complex. And our own favorite, power stations, complicated. It might be a little complex also. The power grid, very complex. Systems can be both, and often are. All right, there are lots and lots of different complex systems. I don't have time to even talk about this at all. You can look at these and say, oh, I can choose the power transmission grid, and I can choose markets, and I can choose meteorology, weather, and I can put them together and I can make something that's even more complicated, and that's really how the real world is. All right, so forests and forest fires. Forests are really cool things. They're really cool for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons that they're really cool is because there's interactions between the different pieces. And those interactions become really, really important when you have a lightning strike or someone carelessly throws a cigarette out the window. And you then have fires that grow and depend upon what's happened in the past, because that sets the sparsity of the forest, and it sets the dryness and things like that. And so that's a complex system. We can build models based on exactly what I just said. Really, really simple models. And these simple models of forests and forest fires actually show behavior like density and numbers of fires that are very, very close to what we actually find in the real world. And in fact, you can see over here, this one has a little fire burning it. But if you take a picture from above, even in years like this, which seem almost apocalyptic in terms of the fires, there's not very many fires that you see from satellites, unless you're looking at one particular area that's burning. So then we can use this to do what-if type analyses. And this is not Gwen. Oh, Gwen's not here. Good. This isn't a plot. Okay. Oh, Gwen is here. This isn't a plot. All right. So what this is showing is a time series of fires. And it's a long time, so you see lots of fires in here. But in one case, it was a normal system, and the blue one. And in the red case, we had forest firefighters going out and suppressing little fires. This is a good thing, right? Not really. The big fires are much more probable if you suppress the little fires. This is something that actually has been known for a long time, and yet we still do it. And this shows this heavy tail I was talking about. So this is the size of the fire, and this is the number of events. And so the blue case, again, no control, fewer big events, more little events. With control, more big events. Bad. I'm out of time. People have groups and individuals. The groups and individuals are interesting, because if I ask you guys separately, I take you up and I separate you into individuals and ask you, do you like the background of my slides? Some of you will say yes, some of you will say no. But if I have this group together and I say, do you guys like the background to my slides? And one of you please help me say, beautiful. Well, look at that, it's spread. All of you now think this is beautiful because of the nonlinear interactions. So it turns out that people behave in a very similar way, and we can spread fads, and we can do all kinds of things. And one of the things that we do that's not so good is if one of us is risk averse and the group becomes risk averse, it actually can have a similar effect. And that similar effect is that with risk averse groups, we actually can get more bad things. And I've run out of time. I love this quote. So the ability to differentiate between large and small risks is an important thing, and parents out there know this is true. You got to let your kids fail sometimes. And there's this quote that says, without this, we may wake up one morning and find the human race is in decline, undone by something as simple as being unable to take a risk. And I think that's really true, and risk aversion is a problem. So I don't have actually time to talk to you about the power grid. That's unfortunate. Power grid is really cool. It's a really highly coupled, complex system. And so I'm going to just, until Max grabs me by the back of my pants, I'm going to just really quickly go through this. And so blackouts we know about, they're bad. And And they really are bad, but they're really rare, actually. In a 20-year record, there are only 512 reportable blackouts. That's not the kind of blackouts we have in Fairbanks every other day. Those are not reportable. And that means less than 26 blackouts a year, but the big ones are really bad. This one here is the 2003 blackout that you can actually see in this picture when a lot of the Northeast was blacked out. And so this complex system is one that we have to investigate, and these are not plots either. They really aren't. These are pictures, really pretty pictures of heavy tails of the blackouts. Let's go. This isn't a picture plot either. So the bottom line from this, which I'll just tell you very quickly, is that if we make the system more reliable, the components of the system more reliable, so we make the power stations less likely to fail, or we make the lines less likely to break down, it turns out, unfortunately, once again, it makes our risk of large failures larger. So this is terrible, all right? So you can't legislate these away. This is simply what happens. And there is a good thing, and that is we can make things better. Unfortunately, when you talk to the planners and the engineers about this, they really don't like this idea, because if we have redundant components, the redundant components actually can decrease the likelihood of failures. So the big failures are over here, little ones with the regular case, and then with the redundant lines, they're reduced. That would be good, but it's really expensive, and that's the problem with it. Okay, I can't talk to you about distributed generation except to say that when you have distributed generation, the kind of good thing that we want, you can also have bad effects from that. And so I'm going to stop with this, and that is, when you look at things from the point of view of complex systems, you see that large-scale events are unavoidable, but it's relatively insensitive to the little things. Dynamics over many timescales are there. And this gives us a new way of looking at things. And so what I'd like you to go home and do is your homework is to start looking at the world around you from the lens of complex systems. Thanks very much.